I explained a long time ago, but you don't seem to understand. There's nothing that humans are able to conceptualize that does not have a beginning. There's no example of anything you could bring up that does not start somewhere. So if you think that the universe created itself, that doesn't make any sense. We have never seen anything that didn't come from a start. Everything has a start. The only explanation for how everything was created, because as part of Allah's creation, the only explanation is something must be divine that we are not able to understand because it's better and because it's greater than us that created everything that exists. Thank you for the 5 zombie beasts. Melina is still in that childish phase of sex, drugs, and travel. I remember being like that when I was 18. When she grows and matures, she will become a good wife, inshallah. Great message.
That's good. Thank you.
When do you think you're gonna grow up and accept Islam as the one true religion?
Well, someone needs to convince me first. I would have to like need a full-on convince stream, you know, or something.
Okay, I can give you Dawah right now before we have a lot of stuff to react to, chat. But should I? Type of one if I should give her Dawah right now. I tried to last time and then you just went off into it. I started explaining. You're like, what about Buddhism? Like I didn't even finish.
It's so good. I kind of want you to like read about Buddhism.
I think you just like Buddhism because you can just do a bunch of haram stuff and then not really get any repercussions for it.
It's just about like love and everything around you and like God and universe is everything. That's kind of what it is about. It's just about love. And
it's
I like
just about
that.
love. So
yeah, I like that.
So you just
love
do
is
whatever
everything.
You
love everything. You love awareness and existing. Like that's like really cool. Doesn't that sound cool?
Are there any rules?
I actually don't know. I don't know too much about it, but like just the main idea of it.
That's what I'm saying. It sounds like you just like it because there's no repercussions for your actions in Buddhism.
I don't know if like negative rules, like making people not do certain things is... I like the idea of just like being aware, like not being forced is like a certain thing. Otherwise you're not like a real thing for it or whatever. But like, yeah.
Okay,
that's probably
why do you think the entire universe, I'll explain it to you the way I found Islam. How do you think everything was created? Everything that you see, everything that's around us.
Oh, I have absolutely no idea. That's like the question that we're all asking, right? We have no idea why we're here or what we're doing.
Well, don't you sometimes have you noticed, because you believe in love all the time, that there must be an instance of something divine? Like sometimes when you're in nature and then the birds will come at a certain time, or you look at the ocean and the way the waves hit, or you look like the way a flower grows, or you see a baby and how pure it is, that there's something, or like the patterns you see, how some plants look like genitals, for example, or how you see things that look alike. Like sometimes you could look in the sky and things look like an eye, for example. You see a lot of patterns and there's a lot of signs. Can you admit that you've seen a lot of signs that show that there must have been some sort of divine creator?
I'm not really sure if it would be a divine creator that would be like the answer to it, but that things are really magical, yeah.
Okay.
But
so if things are magical, then it doesn't mean that everything that you see is not just random. There's you've noticed patterns.
Yes, we do notice patterns, but we also put things together that doesn't necessarily have to be a pattern. Like an animal wouldn't notice probably a pattern in the same way as a human does, right? So it could be the case that we're just like seeing things different way. Like if I take mushrooms,
how do you know that's not true? That animals don't see patterns, for example. Like they all are connected. You see birds fly in a flock, and they don't even communicate in a way that we understand.
Yeah, it might be the case that they are seeing it. But like, okay, have you ever done mushrooms before?
Yeah,
you have. You see patterns that you probably wouldn't see as much if you were sober.
Right.
Yeah. So I feel like it has to do with that a lot more. Like, do you think that if you're high on mushrooms, you might be more connected to God in that case because you see a lot of patterns?
Possibly.
Yeah, but you don't do mushrooms.
I have done mushrooms. I don't do it anymore. I don't feel the need to, because once you understand like what it's helping you see, there's no need to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
And where do mushrooms grow from the earth? So something from the earth that like no one made that in a lab. It's something that comes from the earth.
You think that's better? But I asked you to do kava once and you said no, even though that's
I don't do drugs anymore. But
yeah, I know, but a mushroom is a drug too, right? But it comes from earth. Or smoking weed is the same thing. It's a plant.
So there are these things that can alter your brain that come from the earth.
Yeah.
So there must be some.
Those are okay. It's like smoking weed is okay.
It's not about okay. You're pointing out things that must show that there's some sort of divine creation out there. There's someone there that must have created this.
I don't know about that.
It can't just exist from nothing.
No, but I don't know if it's a person or like.
I didn't say a person.
No, it could be just like the universe itself.
Sure.
Could be a creation, right?
Right. So something created it.
Or the universe created itself, maybe. And we don't know if it's a creator, if it's like just like the universe that happened.
It doesn't have to be. You're attributing the image of a creator, and that maybe that's holding you back. But something, in essence, whatever you want to believe in it, if it's love, if it's the universe, there is something that created everything.
Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, we don't know that. but let's say that it is.
Okay. And then you have to look at the one religion that respects that there is one creator and that acknowledges the only monotheistic religion, and that's Islam. Islam has stood the test of time. The book is written 1400 years ago, it hasn't been altered. And then everything that came from Muhammad's, peace be upon him, that came from his mouth when he was reciting the Quran, he didn't even really know how to read and write properly. He was sent by the creator and he just started reciting these words. He started telling exactly what Allah wanted him to say, and then they were able to go and transcribe it. And from that day, he was able to describe the patterns in the universe. He was able to describe the waters, and he even knew that there was an orbit. He knew about the sun and the moon and what times of day that we should pray and how it correlates to the rest of the planets. There's a lot of signs in the Quran that show that it cannot just be from the mouth of a human. It can't just be, it must have been the creator sending him a message.
How do you know that it's just one creator, not plenty? How would you know that for sure?
Because even if there are plenty of creators or plenty of prophets, which there were, there's always has to come to one. Something must have created everything.
We don't know that. I feel like there's no proof of that there's one creator or there's multiple.
Nothing can exist without somebody creating it. Without something.
Yeah, but who created that person? And who created the God?
It has to end at one point. But
who created the God in that case?
That's where it ends. There must have been.
Yeah, but you said that it can't end. So what if there's like several gods? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Even if there were several gods or several prophets, for example, it always has to go back to one divine creator, something that is greater than us, greater than we can even conceptualize, greater than we can even understand.
Yeah, but if you're saying that, why one in that case? Why couldn't it just be the same thing with, like, let's say that it's 5 different creators that created everything, and you say someone must have created them. But in that case, I could say that someone must have created that one God in that case too. Why couldn't it just be 5 in that case instead of
Because it always
1?
has to go back to something that's more divine than the rest. There's always something that's greater than other. If there were 5,
how do you know that it has to be that way? What proof do you see in the real world?
Because there's always a hierarchy. There always has to be some sort of supremacy. That's how everything is made. A chicken can't come without an egg being laid.
Yeah, but who laid the egg?
Chicken always comes. So think about it like that. There's a divine chicken, and the universe is the egg. So one greater thing that we cannot understand, that is not worth explaining, that is not worth trying to go and draw or really try to conceptualize or figure out. There must be one, and there's no point in us even trying to understand what this is. But there's something divine that is responsible for our existence here.
Okay. So how do we even know in that case that this one creator has set a bunch of rules? Like, where do those rules come from? Like, how do we know that, like, from the things that we see around us, that these has to be the cases of rules? Like, how do we know that that is 100% true? Because all the things that we're seeing, if we see a flower that looks like another one or something like that, we see a bunch of patterns. How does that end up into words of, like, this is what you're allowed to and this is what you're not allowed to do? Because it's very specific,
what does that have to do
right?
with the flower?
Like, it sounds like you're telling me, or maybe you're not, that all the things that's in the Quran or the Bible or whatever, there's a bunch of, like, rules, right? How do we know that those rules are actually real? Because you say, like, oh, we see everything around us, so we must think that there has to be a bunch of, like, there has to be a God, there has to be things that, because there's patterns around us, we can read into those patterns, oh, how to live life in the best way possible. So how do we know that the things that's in the Quran is actually the correct way of living?
Because we are the one species that we don't just act, we can think before we act. Other species, they're born and then they know exactly what they have to do. They don't contemplate the same way we do. They don't hold a banana or they don't hold a piece of fruit. A flower doesn't look at itself and think, I don't want to be a flower. I asked about the patterns.
Like, why do you think the rules in the Quran are the rules that
because the rules
real
apply
ones?
For us, for people, because we are.
But isn't the same thing in the Bible?
It is, but the Bible has. That's true. But the Bible has more inconsistencies and does not believe in. They believe in the Trinity. They don't believe in one creator. They believe that Jesus was also God. So, and a man cannot be God. There has to be one divine creator. That's an inconsistency, a hypocrisy within the Bible that doesn't make sense. In Islam, there's just one creator, and we worship him. And even if you look at the Bible, Jesus, he prayed down. He put his head to the floor when he worshipped.
Wasn't he
Allah.
praying at God? Was he praying to himself?
He was praying to God. That's why the Bible didn't get everything right.
As well. Is it true God?
The Christians got it wrong. They
got it wrong.
They thought that Jesus was God. He was one of the prophets, peace be upon him, that was sent by Allah. But Muhammad peace be upon him, was the final prophet. So the Christians they have been misguided. They think that if you look in the Bible, Jesus would pray exactly the way Muslims do. Jesus believed in the Father. Jesus believed in God.
Wasn't Jesus
in
a
essence,
Jew?
was a Muslim. He was ethnically a Jew, but the way he prayed and the worship and the way he believed, he was Muslim.
I see.
That they don't say that in the Bible, but everything that he practiced, like you could definitely argue that Jesus was a Muslim. Not ethnically, but theologically, yeah.
So why not Buddhism or Hinduism? Why?
Because they believe in like different gods and energy and
I think that's Hinduism that believes in multiple gods.
Yeah, they believe in all these different weird idols.
But I feel like Buddhism kind of just like believes that the universe is God itself.
That doesn't make any sense.
Why?
How can the universe can't have created itself? That doesn't make sense.
Why not?
How could something create itself?
Why would you need like an individual to do it? Why couldn't it just create itself? Because I feel like that makes a lot more sense that the universe could just
something
create
that's
itself.
created itself.
I can't explain that.
So why even argue that?
But from the start, something was to happen.
That's what I'm saying. This is why Islam is the only religion that makes
But
sense.
I can't like figure out that there's like an individual or like one thing that like created the entire thing. I feel like that makes a lot less sense than just like it created itself.
Because we are
personally.
Because we exist in the universe. We are part of the universe. We are not greater than the universe, so we cannot have created it. The creator has to be something that's greater than its creation. So for anything to have existed, there has to have been one divine creator, something that we can't conceptualize, that created everything.
I feel like it makes more sense that everything is
something
created itself. I feel like it makes sense.
But explain something that's created itself. How does that make more sense?
I can't explain.
So how does it make more sense if you can't explain it?
But from time, with time and space, things has happened, and I feel like it just has developed by itself. From like
name one. Okay, but you're saying that makes more sense.
But also from we don't even know where the start is. Like it probably has no start. So everything is just happening. Like everything is just happening randomly.
What doesn't have a start? Explain something that doesn't.
The
have
universe.
A start. But you can't explain that because you haven't seen it.
No, I have absolutely no idea. But you can explain that there's an individual person that started everything, right?
But that's the only logical explanation, because explain something that you have seen and what you know of the universe and everything. It does not have a beginning and an end. Something that you have seen, something that you can conceptualize, it doesn't have a beginning and an end. Everything you know has started, has been created. Everything. There's nothing that just exists.
Well, not really, because it's not like a flower comes from absolutely nothing. There's like a bunch of different particles that comes together, right? Like everyone is stardust. Like it's like the earth wasn't just like created just like that. It's a lot of different things that happen in time and space.
Right,
for
the
things
seed
to
creates
happen.
a flower, but something has to create the seed. And then you can go back and say the fertilizing or the dirt, but it always goes back to something. Something is not created without something. Something you can't just create.
Yeah, but
can't create.
But
itself.
The atoms itself is already there, right? It's always
not.
Of course it is.
It always has to go back. If you trail back anything, it has to come from.
I mean, that's
creation.
like a thing itself, but like, how do I explain this? Like, if you poop, it becomes dirt, and then in that dirt, it grows flowers.
But you created
and
the
they're just
poop.
doing that. Yeah, I know, but and it does that forever.
My point is.
But why does it have to? But why does it?
My point is, you didn't answer my question. I'm
Yeah.
asking you to explain something that you have seen that does not have a beginning. Everything that you are
But
aware
it doesn't
of,
really have a beginning. It just goes. It just goes on forever, right? Into eternity.
Can you
That's what
name
it does.
something that you know in existence that does not have a beginning?
That doesn't have a beginning?
Yes.
I don't think that anything really has an end or a beginning. Like we can look at like a flower that dies, whatever, but it's a lot more complicated than that because it's all the atoms and everything, right?
It wasn't a flower.
It was something, yeah, but it's not like. But where is the start? There's no start or an end. It just keeps going on forever.
But before it was a flower, it was something else. So the creation of a flower started. There was an inception
You mean that
of a flower.
You mean that the energy that started to grow the flower is God? Is that what you mean? Because the flower was something else before it became a flower, clearly, because that's like how physics work.
Do you see? You see how you're not answering like what I'm saying?
I don't understand what you're saying.
I'm asking you to explain something that you know of that did not have a beginning. The flower, and I understand that it comes from something else,
yeah, but
it has a beginning that you are aware of. It came from
You mean
something.
when it's like when it is existing as a flower,
Yes.
has a start and
Yes.
an end? Yeah, sure.
Everything
yes.
that exists has a start.
Yes.
Everything that you are aware of.
But
everything.
I don't think you could think about it that way, right? I don't think that really works.
What are the ways there to think about it?
Like you can think about life as a start and an ending and stuff like that, right? But you can't really like rocks. Where does that come from?
It comes from sand.
Yeah, and then it becomes rocks if it puts together in a long time, and then it becomes sand again, and then it does that over and over and over again, right?
Okay, but it had to have come from sand first. So everything has a beginning.
Or
everything that you're going to explain,
but it's a rock from the beginning too, right? It gets like crushed, and then it, like by time it becomes together
But
again.
eventually it started from a piece of sand. So my point is everything that you can think of and conceptualize
Or
and explain,
it comes from a rocket from the space, like billions of years. Like
regardless of what you're saying, everything has a beginning. You see what you're saying?
yes,
Everything comes.
But something happens before that too. There's things
Exactly.
that comes. There's a lot of things that happen.
Do you know what happened before that? Before, if you go all the way back, it must have been a divine creator. That's the only explanation for the universe. You can't just go back
or it could just go on forever, and everything just kind of like happened. We don't know if it has a start.
If it does go on, if the universe does go on forever, it must have had a start.
No,
Nothing can go on forever without a beginning.
Well,
and you've
not
explained
really.
that just now by not bringing up anything that does not have a beginning.
No, but like life could, sure, like something like existing or
Life
living or like
begins.
becoming like a thing that we can physically see. We can like think about a flower as an individual thing. But before that flower was a flower, it was something else.
You're going in circles now.
No, this is legit what it is, right?
Right, but
like the atoms was something else before that.
Right.
Yeah.
We agree.
So there was
you said
no
that.
start and ending. It was just the same thing, but like it got created to like a thing for a little bit. And then it died, and then it like became something else later on. But that goes on forever.
Of course.
Yeah, but
Well,
it has nothing.
if you go back, like I've explained,
But in that case, there must. If you think about it as a god, there has to be something from the beginning as well. What was God before it became a god? It has to be that case because that's what everything
that doesn't
is.
make any. The only logical explanation is there must be something divine that is greater than all of the creations that we are able to conceptualize.
Because it comes from you're
not understanding.
if you're thinking about God as a flower,
You're in the argument mode. It's not.
No, I'm trying to. You're telling me that the flower has a beginning and an end, so God has to have the same thing. But the flower is like, yeah, like being a flower has a beginning and an end. But before that, it was something else.
Yes,
so if
you
you
said this
talk,
5
yeah,
times now.
if you
You
so
said
if
this
you
5
talk,
times
yeah,
now.
if you think about the flower as a god, right? Because that's what. If you think about the flower as a god, it must have a before in that case.
That's not what anybody
But
said.
you said that everything goes like this. It must be one creation, and then it all spread out to like a bunch of existence, right? That's like how you were explaining it. And
What?
you're explaining that everything comes from a beginning and an end, but you haven't given me an argument for why that is.
Because I explained a long time ago, but you don't seem to understand. There's nothing that humans are able to conceptualize that does not have a beginning. There's no example of anything you could bring up that does not start somewhere. So if you think that the universe created itself, that doesn't make any sense. We have never seen anything that didn't come from a start. Everything has a start. The only explanation for how everything was created, because as part of Allah's creation, the only explanation is something must be divine that we are not able to understand because it's better and because it's greater than us that created everything that exists. Something cannot create itself. That has never existed in existence, and there's no point in arguing that.
Well, we don't know that.
But
100%, like
if
we
you
can't
have
know that.
never seen that, if you have never understood that to be the case, then why argue for that?
What am I? I'm not arguing for a god. I'm not arguing.
You're arguing against God.
Yeah, I don't think there's like an individual that has created everything, and that's all that goes back to. I think we don't know. That's what I think, because it doesn't. I don't think there's an individual or a start. I feel like it's probably just infinity.
Okay.
I feel like everything is just infinity.
All right, but you need to stop going based off of what you feel and think about what makes sense. If you are,
I mean, infinity is probably a real thing, don't you think?
But it's not just about how I can't just feel like it's infinite. You have to
No,
think,
but I can
I'm giving
explain.
I'm giving you the logical
I
explanation.
feel like I
for
can
this.
explain what infinity is.
Because something goes on forever.
Yeah,
Okay. And
but
from
you don't
before,
believe in
too.
infinity in that case.
No, something, because infinity doesn't work without a start. Nothing that
Okay, in
you...
that case, I'm curious. If you cut not that one. If you cut this in half, let's say we took this part here, we cut it in half. How many times do you think you could do it until there's an end?
And to what? It will get smaller and smaller.
Yeah. How long until it stops?
Well, it'd be smaller than my knife, so I wouldn't be able to cut it anymore.
No, I know, but let's say that you could. How many times could you do that, you think, physically? Like, how many times can you do it? You could do it until infinity.
No, there's no knife that would be that size.
No. Let's say that there's no knife. Let's say that there's a magic knife that can cut it all the way. How long can you do it? Or let's say that you take this and you double it up and you do knots like
What's the point of this
how
argument?
long? Because infinity is a real thing. That's what I'm trying to argue for you. So we don't know if.
But you see where the start comes from? It always starts somewhere. Everything has a start.
Well, you could always like double it up as well, right? You could always like make it.
That doesn't
really big.
refute
That's
my
what I'm
argument. That
saying.
doesn't refute my point. Everything that you can conceptualize has a beginning. And you haven't been able to debunk that.
I mean, you could do it forever. That's the thing. Like everything is infinity. You can cut everything to infinity, but you could also like plus everything to infinity, right? Like it's the same thing with numbers. If you think about numbers, it could go on forever, right? Just like anything. So life could be the same thing, life or not life, but like existence.
Where do you start counting from?
Well, present Buddhism, being right here, right now.
But that has
It's what
nothing.
God
That's
is.
not numbers. Numbers isn't Buddhism. Where do you start counting?
I have no idea. You can start counting from anywhere, right? But
Where-
but it's literally infinity.
Where does numerology start?
What's that mean? Sorry.
When you start counting,
Mm-hmm.
what number do you start counting from?
Usually 1. But you could
From
also,
zero.
but you could also, yeah, 0. But you could also go down, right? And you could also go up. My point is that it doesn't seem like
So
it's just like a
once
flower.
again,
It's
everything
just,
has a start.
It's just not like a flower.
Everything has a beginning, even numbers.
But not
everything
really, because you
starts
can
from
go
somewhere.
down. Yeah, but like you could still go both ways. Is my point. So
Sure, but you're equating
you can,
time.
yeah, you can start counting with a flower, but you could also think about what happened before it was a flower and what happens after it's a flower, right? But just because there's a start
you
or
need
whatever
to stop
doesn't mean
applying the
that
ideas
there
of
hasn't been
time.
like.
It's
Well, it kind of is the existence, right? Like a long time ago, there has to be a God that created everything, right? So we kind of think we have to think about
I don't think you need
time.
to think of it in terms of time or in terms of when, but something must have created. That's all. You need to like you've seen those space movies where time isn't real or whatever, and it's cyclical or whatever. Don't think in terms of time. It's irrefutable that everything we are aware of has a start. True or false?
I think I know of that. I don't think I believe that actually. I mean, you could start it from a certain spot, but there has been stuff that's happened beforehand, just like the flower. Like before the flower was a flower, it was something else. So there's not like we don't know if there's a start or an end. That's kind of the whole thing. Yeah, agree to disagree.
I tried.
You can try. I mean, you can try a lot. You're perfectly fine for it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's it.
Your job?